But at some point in the conversation, my God allowed my dad to come up from hell. I saw my dad. I'm looking out of the window of the truck. It's at nighttime. No lights are on. Where I'm at is dark. And I see my dad come from this side. He was escorted by at least 3 demons. They were all black. I couldn't make any distinctive features out on them at all. They were just black as you could get. And they were little. And for some reason my dad was, don't ask me how, but he was smaller. And my dad, they escorted him here, and they went off to the side, and then my dad was right in front of me. Maybe it was just the way the vision was. I'm not sure. But my dad he looked exactly like he did when he died. I was 13 when he died. He was an alcoholic. I never really knew where my dad was. I never really thought about it. Again, I hadn't even repented of my sins yet. I mean, I hadn't been living for God. I was still going back and forth with drug addiction at this time. So I had just read the Bible for the very first time. I had read like the first paragraph of Genesis before and a few Proverbs, but I really read the Bible for the very first time only like a couple months before this. So I didn't know where my dad went, and I didn't even really consider it. I didn't think about it, but I love my dad. And my dad was, he didn't have glasses on. He wore glasses, but he looked exactly like he did when he died. And I could see his facial features. He was very, very clear. He was white and grayish, kind of ghostly. He wasn't black or anything like the demons were. And he looked extremely relieved to be out of there. Extremely relieved. Very comfortable, very thankful to be out of there. And I started to try and ask God if he would take him out of there. See, things got really bad for me that night. I'll get into that. But I think God was trying to intervene and give me an opportunity to try and come clean and work with him before he allowed, because the devil wanted to get his hands on me. He really did. But God had to allow him to do that. This is just in retrospect what I've been able to think about and to reflect on. But and the reason why I think God intervened at that point and tried to reason with me about the whole situation. But I was trying to get the Lord to take my dad out of there. I didn't want my dad to go back there. And I was sitting there trying to ask God, well, can you do this? Can you annihilate him? Can you make him as if he never existed? I mean, can you put him on he said he couldn't do that. Or he wouldn't do that. But I said, well, can you put him on another planet? Just by himself. I mean, I was sitting there trying to plead with God not to send him back to this place. And then somehow God asked me, so, well, do you want to come to heaven? And I don't know what was going through my head. I guess as a result of maybe me going back to the cough syrup so much, and maybe even being on it that night a little bit. Believe me, if I was straight as a whip that night when all this was going on. I mean, that was enough to knock your buzz right out. What was going on. And he said, do you want to come here? And I like I said, I guess as a result of me going back and forth, I honestly didn't know that I was fit for heaven. At this point, my confidence was pretty low, and I said, I don't know if it's for me, God. I mean, I'm sitting here telling him, and he said, well, your grandpa's here. Don't you want to see your grandpa?" And the only grandpa that was dead at that time, the other one was still alive, was Grandpa Enderby, my dad's dad. Later, my dad's dad, Grandpa Enderby, he had really been seeking the Lord the last couple years of his life. I found that out from my aunt, his daughter, and so it made sense. But I said, well, can you just make me and my dad as if we never existed? Just make us disappear. I wanted to go with I wanted to die too. I was really concerned. I didn't want my dad to go back there at all. And so I was trying to really, really plead with the Lord, and it wasn't working. The Lord, when he makes up his mind about it, he makes up his mind, and that's where my dad didn't belong to God anymore. He didn't belong. He belonged to the devil. And at the very end of the conversation, at some point, I don't know why, my dad said, "I'm proud of you." He looked at me and he said that. He said, "I'm proud of you." And as soon as he said that, the demons that were standing there, they suddenly reappeared from over here, and they grabbed my dad, and they began to whip up on him like nobody's business. I mean, they were thrashing him good. I mean, all I could hear was just, they were ripping him apart. It was terrible. And I looked as they were doing it, but they were moving back out of the natural eye. So they disappeared, but even after they disappeared, I could still hear it a little bit. And they were hurting him really bad. And I thought about, why would he say that? Here I am, having a conversation with God. I'm not doing very good. And the only reason that I think that would make them mad, the demons, that mad, was that maybe the devil, when he went to get him out of hell, his part of hell or whatever, to bring him to earth, maybe he said, "Your son is causing all kinds of trouble for us. Get up and let's come up here." To take him up there. I thought long about this because I was reaching homeless people. I was up there in Ukiah causing all kinds of trouble. That was a drug area, big time. Like I said, weed everywhere. The biggest bust in High Times history at that time was by Ukiah. Lots of meth, lots of parolees. It was a bad area. And I took a stand for Jesus in that area, and I really shined my light. Even though I relapsed, I screwed up, I really did reach a lot of people. So maybe that was the reason. I have no idea why he said that. It's a mystery to me. And, surprisingly today, that was a traumatic thing to see my dad be a prisoner like that. And I know where he's at. Because he was an alcoholic, he was an adulterer. We never read the Bible. I never saw him pray. He never went to church. That's where he's at, He's in hell. And even though I know that's where he's at, God's given me peace. That's where he's at, and I can only work out my own salvation with fear and trembling. I can't. It's a lie to think that you can pray someone out of hell. I mean, judgment has been set. That's where he's at. I don't want him there. Of course I don't. But this is why we're alive now, to make the decisions that we make now, so we don't go there. We stay on the narrow road, the path to life. It's all laid out in the Bible.